Hello and welcome. My name is Eddie Chow, and I'm going to be taking you through the Back-End Developer course. So let's take a look and see what this course has to offer. Now I know you can just click on that tab and see the extensive list of all the different videos. So feel free to take advantage of that at any time. But we'll go ahead and take a look and see some of the different ideas and concepts that we'll cover along the way. So this can be done in person. This is why we see the various days here at the top. But again, this is at your own pace. So feel free to take advantage of that pause button to fast forward. Maybe if I'm talking too slow, you can speed up that video as well. So starting off here in chapter number 1, we're going to set up our development environment. This entails setting up the JDK, MySQL, and so on so that you're ready to go. If you have those already taken care of, then no worries there. A lot of what we're going to be dealing with in the backend revolves around OSGI. So it's very important that we take our time there and really develop a foundation with OSGI. Everything that we're going to be doing is going to be built on top of OSGI. So make sure to spend a good amount of time there and really solidify your understanding of OSGI before going forward. So we'll take a look at those, see what does OSGI have to offer for us. How do we develop the OSGI specific things like bundles, components, and services, and seeing a little bit of the benefits as well. Over here in chapter number 3, we're going to then take a little bit of what we know in the Liferay world and combine it with the OSGI world. So we'll see what exactly is this thing called the OSGI container and why is it important for all of our OSGI development. So Liferay's OSGI container here on chapter number 3, and we'll also see how to make or develop some very basic OSGI bundles or Liferay modules. From there, we'll see the combining of the OSGI in the Liferay world, and then afterwards we'll see how do we debug the things that we're creating. So we'll take a look at this tool called the GoGo shell, as well as an alternative tool called the Felix Web Console. So chapter 4 is about debugging and managing our OSGI bundles. Over in chapter number 5, if you've been with us in previous versions of Liferay, you may have heard of the word portlet. Well, maybe it is probably an understatement. You have heard of portlets. And we're still going to take some time to cover them, right? Portlets are still a very important aspect of developing our applications within Liferay. So we're going to spend a good amount of time talking about them. Afterwards, we'll then see how do we combine the OSGI world with the portlet world so we can create Liferay portlet modules or OSGI portlet bundles. Afterwards, we're going to be spending a lot of time here in chapter number 6. So when you hit chapter 6, really brace yourself. You're going to be there for a little bit of time. So chapter 6 is where we're going to develop a real world application, or at least try to simulate realism. So we'll take a look at what is it that we're going to be doing, and then we're going to go layer by layer, talking about the MVC design pattern. So we'll create the model, the view, and the controller, and we'll see how does Liferay incorporate some of the tools that you may or may not be familiar with from previous versions. So a big emphasis here is how do we make a real world application the Liferay way. So we'll take a look at how do we ensure that people are able to do what we want them to do, but nothing else. So access control or permission checking. We'll build out that presentation or the view layer and seeing all of the different things along with it. Within the presentation layer, we're also going to take a look at the controller layer as well. So we're going to kind of have a 2-in-1 there. So we'll start off MVC, develop each one of those parts. Afterwards, we'll see how do we configure our application, or how do we integrate our application so that it can be configured within what's known as the configuration API or Liferay's system settings. From there, we'll then take our application and integrate it into Liferay's various frameworks. So Liferay's search framework, Liferay's asset framework, and then Liferay's workflow framework. So MVC, develop each one of those different parts, right? Configure or integrate our application into a number of different frameworks. Once we do that, fun's not over yet with our real world application. We're then going to be taking our application and exposing a number of services to the outside world. So we'll take a look at the various web services that are already created, as well as how do we create REST services for our application. After we take care of all of that in chapter 6, a really long chapter, we're going to be hitting the second portion of our backend developer or backend development course. We're going to be taking a look at how do we customize Liferay. So what are the different parts of Liferay that we want to change to better fit what we're trying to do? So starting off, we're going to kind of break down Liferay and talk about the architectural aspects of it. So what's going on in each layer, the view, controller, model, and so on. Here in chapter 8, we're going to see the different ways that we can configure the view layer. So a number of different tools that we get to customize the view layer. We'll progress through and talk about some of the more easy ways and then eventually hitting the more complicated ways. From there, we'll skip the controller layer and then we're going to hit the model layer. Here in chapter number 9, we're going to be talking about how do we extend Liferay's schema, right? How do we add columns to Liferay's database? So we're going to be introduced to a concept known as custom fields and the Expando API. They're two sides of the same coin. Chapter 10 is going to be the service layer. So how do we modify or extend some of Liferay's services, as well as how do we modify and extend some of OSGI services as well. We'll then take a look and see some of the OSGI specific ideas and concepts needed to override services in the OSGI world. From there, we'll come back to the controller layer. We'll talk briefly about struts actions, but we're really going to be hammering away the MVC commands and how to override them. Chapter 12 talks about portal events. So as things happen within Liferay, we want to be able to listen to those events and then do something as that occurs. A very common example is when I sign in, maybe I want a specific action to occur. Maybe I want to authenticate against a third-party system, or maybe I want to do some checking or anything you can think of in between. Needless to say, a lot of actions in Liferay we can listen for and then perform something as that event or action occurs. Chapter 13, we're going to talk about Liferay's message bus. Chapter 14, we're going to take a look and see how to customize Liferay's search framework or the portal search. So after chapter 14, right, we're all done. So feel free anytime throughout the videos to pause, to fast forward, to rewind, right, or anything else. Right? This is your experience, so feel free to explore these videos however you see fit. Right? And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started, and I'll see you in the next video.